Vidhammer Fantasy.
Welcome back to Vidhammer. I'm Spudlow, and in this video I'm going over my first round matchup at Crucible 3. This is the 2,500 point no-holds-barred grand tournament with a Swedish comp that decides the first round pairings only. It's not actually used for scoring of any kind. This first scenario is Ancient Banners. There are 3 capturable banners on the center line of the board that scatter before deployment. There are bonus points at the end for capturing the banners and being in your opponent's deployment zone. Our terrain elements are an arcane ruins up at the top, 2 walls, a 1-story building, and an ordinary forest. The water in the middle is basically just a nothing fluff terrain piece. I go over my list in a separate video, but I'll put the link up for you if you want. As far as my spell generation, my level 1 Warlock Engineer gets Warp Lightning, the level 2 gets Death Frenzy and Skitter Leap, while the Grey Seer ends up with Wither, Blessed with Filth, Plague, and the dreaded 13th. In retrospect, I probably should have gone more with Ruin for my Grey Seer, since I'm playing against the High Elves in this round, and there's a significant number of Seaguard and a Frostheart Phoenix on the board. Having Howling Warp Gale definitely would have helped out. But hindsight's 20/20. For his list, I don't have the specifics, but he has a level 4 caster with high magic that ends up with Drain Magic, Apotheosis, however you pronounce that, the healing spell, Hand of Glory, and Fiery Convocation. There's also a level 2 with the Lore of Shadow that ends up with the Withering and Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma. For his actual core units, he has 2 units of Illyrian Reavers, a block of 8 Cavalry, 20 Sea Guard, joined by a character with the Reaver Bow, about 30 White Lions, 25 Sword Masters, a Frostheart Phoenix, and 2 Bolt Throwers. For deployment, I start with some Giant Rats and my War Machines to give me a couple of looks, but all I start seeing are the Illyrian Reavers. Then some Lothern Sea Guard come out. I start putting down some Clan Rats up at the top, figuring I'll put my Grey Seer in one of them and try to get up next to the Arcane Ruins to channel extra dice. And he puts his beefier blocks down at the bottom. He's got some White Lions toward the center and the Swordmaster block down at the bottom. With a good deal of smaller units up at the top, especially the Frost Phoenix, I put my Hell Pit up there, figuring that's where I'll try to get points and leave the slaves in the Doom Wheel to waste time on the lower half of the board, hopefully not give up too many points. Finally, my Gutter Runners come down above the ruin to either take the focus from the Fast Cav or make him move away from him. He makes his Vanguard moves with the Upper Reavers moving away from the Gutter Runners, so at least that's okay. I win the first turn roll and start moving some things out. The Hell Pit and Doom Wheel don't do too bad. I keep the slaves next to the Doom Wheel for accidental microwaving. The Upper Clan Rats that I originally wanted to use as a bunker have a bit of a problem from the Vanguarded Reavers. Although I'm relatively certain that my Clan Rats could win a combat, and probably even a charge against them, I'm pretty sure that my Grey Seer would end up dead. So I move him out into the Storm Vermin, and I put my Warlock Engineer in with the other Clan Rat block for safekeeping, because they started out in that Clan Rat block. Magic is 11 versus 4. I use 2 for Warp Lightning, and he dispels this with 1 die, since I didn't roll all too high. Then I go for 3 with Blessed with Filth on the Clan Rats, and he lets this one go. Finally, I use my last 6 for the dreaded 13th on the White Lions, but the spell fails. Shooting time, and the Doom Wheel does fail to restrain. Misfires, though, and then it runs towards the Swordmasters another 5 inches. That is not good. Sorry, buddy, but you just got a little too close. The first cannon shoots for the Frost Phoenix and gets 4 wounds. I was ecstatic about that first shot. I'm like, sweet, this is going my way. Second, misfires, shoots off the board. For the High Elves, the Sword Masters go ahead and charge the Doom Wheel. Yeah, knew that was coming. The Frost Phoenix pulls back, and I can guess what's going to happen in the magic phase. He's going to get it close, and he's going to heal it. Reavers reform to 1 wide and go past my clan rats, then reform back to 5 wide. This is aggravating, but without a decent number of direct fire weapons, the Warp Lightning spell is my only real way to deal with the fast cavalry. But that's probably why he's going to shut that down. Magic is 6 versus 5, and he uses the first 3 dice for a Hand of Glory on the Sword Masters to give them +3 weapon skill and initiative. The Frost Phoenix we roll gets a +1 strength from its ability. I let Hand of Glory go. I'm not particularly worried about that combat. I know the Doom Wheel is not going to do well. I accept that it's probably going to be destroyed. What's more important is the Phoenix not being able to be healed. And he takes his next 3 dice and he goes for the healing spell on the Phoenix. So I go ahead and throw all my dice to dispel that. That was much more of a concern for me as far as this magic phase went. Then he does a shooting. The Seaguard and the character with the Reaver bow hit the Storm Vermin for 7 wounds. 1 bolt thrower shoots for a Warp Lightning Cannon but fails to wound. And the other shoots at the slaves, but also doesn't manage a wound. Then we do the combat. Doom Wheel does its grinding attack, but they have a ward save versus magic, so they only take 1 wound. And then they hit the Doom Wheel for 6. Even though I save 1, still 5 wounds is all you got. And it has a little nap in the corner as we go to turn 2. The Hell Pit goes after the cavalry, but comes up a little bit short. Giant rats move up to block the white lions, at least, bog them down for a round. I reform the Storm Vermin to 5 wide, since their ranks are already starting to drop. And I move the upper cannon down, so that my nearby clan rats can do a swift reform and move up to block the fast cavalry from charging it. It's irritating because it takes my cannon out for a turn, but at least it keeps him from just, wiping those points off the board. I turn my slaves towards the lower cavalry to effectively do the same thing. Magic ends up 9 versus 7. I use 2 for Warp Lightning, and I roll Snake Eyes, so I failed the spell. Nice. I use the next 3 for Plague, and I rolled an 8, which, with my +4, also fails. So that's nice. 4 dice left. I do something a little bit dim-witted here. I know I want to get my Storm Vermin into combat, and I go ahead and use 4 dice for Death Frenzy on the Storm Vermin. And he lets this one go, even though he's got 7 dice to dispel it, because that's his prime target, and as down as they already are, I just hurt myself. Not good. In shooting, the Warp Fire Thrower shoots for the White Lions, misfires and blows up. Good job. Nice to always get that one reliable shot out of those dudes. First cannon moved, so it can't shoot, and the second one goes for the Phoenix. Hits on the first roll, but then sticks in the ground. No effect. Gutter Runners put 2 wounds on the upper bolt thrower and take it out. Death Frenzy then kills off 4 Storm Vermin. That's not the end of the world, but still, that unit is down to about half strength. He lets me do a late shot from the Doom Rocket here, since, we didn't really move into combat per se. But it only goes 11 inches, falls totally short, misses everything. Now it's back to the High Elves. The Reavers go ahead and charge the blocking clan rats in their flank. White Lions charge the giant rats to clear that out, and the cavalry charges the Hell Pit. That's the combat that I'm hoping is going to go my way. I need something going my way at this point. Magic is some number of dice. I didn't write it down, but he uses the first 2 for a Hand of Glory on the Sea Guard to increase their ballistic skill by 1. That's not looking so nice. Then he uses 3 to go for the Withering on the Storm Vermin, and I'm ready to dispel this one, but the spell actually failed, so that was one nice thing. Unfortunately, he uses the next 4 for Fiery Incantation on my Storm Vermin, and he gets Irresistible Force. The Grey Seer and the BSB both take a wound, and I lose 13 Storm Vermin. That was nasty. He loses all but one spell in the backlash, but still, the damage is done. Shooting Seaguard, of course, shoot for the Storm Vermin again, and he kills off 4, and the Reaver Bow adds 3 more to that. Bolt Thrower takes out another one, and as far as the combat is concerned, White Lions don't have a problem killing off the giant rats and overrunning to grab the banner. Hell Pit kills 4, and then he manages to shrug off everything that comes toward him. So at least that is going nice. Even though I don't have the Thunder Stomp, he still put a whomping out there. Clan Rats and the Reavers swap wounds. The Reavers actually end up running, and I pursue, but the little legs aren't quite enough to catch. In turn 3, I reform my slaves to cover the Warp Lightning Cannon, and I move all of my characters out of the Storm Vermin and put them into the Clan Rats, foreseeing that that unit is going down. Magic is 11 versus 6. I've got a good advantage. I'm wanting to capitalize on this, and I've got a decent range for things. So I go ahead and use the first 3 for Wither on the White Lions, lowers their toughness, and the next 4 is Plague. And this one is probably the one he was anticipating blocking, but I get Irresistible Force, and it kills off all but the last 3 White Lions. So he has one character in there with 3 rank and file guys, and he's not going to get a Lookout Sir roll anymore. I'm not sure what happened in the backlash, but I didn't make a note of it. Last 4 dice, I go for a Warp Lightning, and he gets an Irresistible Dispel, and I was shooting into those White Lions trying to finish them off. It's the same thing I do for the Gutter Runners. They go for the White Lions, but they fail to get any wounds with that ward save. Warp Lightning Cannon shoots for the lone character, but it falls short, and the other one I actually had to move to get behind the slaves to avoid that charge. And again, even though those cannons would be really nice, having those fast cavalry in the way has just made me have to move them around. Over to our combat, where the Hell Pit decides to feed. It's kind of a pain. He only puts 1 wound on the cavalry, and he takes 2 in return this time. Didn't get the saves. As a late action here, I find out that Fiery Incantation is a Remains in Play spell, which I did not know. So my Storm Vermin take more wounds from the flame. Enough so that when Death Frenzy takes effect, it actually kills them off. So I'm not so happy about that, but oh well, it happens. Frostheart Phoenix charges the Warp Lightning Cannon. I couldn't really keep that from happening. Reavers and the Swordmasters charge the slaves, and I don't really care about that one. You go ahead, have the slaves. Magic is 4 versus 3, and he uses all 4 for the Withering on the slaves. But he ends up rolling 4 1s, and I just go ahead and dispel with my dice. Even as it were, I probably should have just let that go. I know I would rather have the slaves explode and possibly potentially do some damage to the Frostheart Phoenix and maybe kill it off. Shooting, the Bolt Thrower shoots for the unengaged Lightning Cannon, but it misses. Combat, the Hell Pit is actually able to kill off the remaining Reavers this time, and the Frostheart Phoenix hits the cannon for only a single wound, and it passes its break test. You go, little cannon, do your stuff. I have the Hell Pit go after the White Lions, but it doesn't make the distance. I move the Gutter Runners up around them to try to take a shot. The upper Clan Rats go for the banner that's on the far side of the ruins. The central Clan Rats turn to avoid a potential flank charge. Magic is 7 versus 4, and I use 2 for Warp Lightning on the White Lions, and it's able to go off, and it kills off the unit. I use the next 3 for Blessed with Filth on the Clan Rats, basically as a deterrent to keep them from getting charged. For the last 2 dice, I go ahead and go for Plague on the Swordmasters, thinking maybe they'd take enough wounds that, there's a chance they could double fail the panic test, but other than that, I wasn't going to get much out of the rest of my dice. Shooting-wise, the Warp Lightning Cannon hits the Bolt Thrower at strength 10, and then it doesn't wound. Gutter Runners shoot at the Swordmasters for lack of anything better, but they don't get any wounds, needing 8s to hit. That was pretty unlikely. For his final turn, he decides to go ahead and grab some points. The Swordmasters do a sidestep into my deployment zone. Then he does a swift reform for the Sea Guard to grab the 3rd banner that's hanging out there. Magic is 10 versus 8, and he uses 5 for the Withering on the Hell Pit, which I'm not entirely liking, and he gets Irresistible Force, which I'm definitely not liking. It only lowers his toughness by 1, thank goodness. He rolls an 8 for the Backlash, and both casters take a wound, but that's relatively irrelevant at this point. Anything short of being sucked into the void doesn't really matter. He loses the remaining power dice, and then we go to shooting and have the Sea Guard do their best to try to get the Hell Pit down, but only manage a single wound past the regens. Then the Bolt Thrower goes in, and it actually scores 2 more. Had me a little bit worried there for a moment, but there's nothing else can be done. Combat, and that's where we call the game for time. We were actually a couple of minutes over, I think. Final point totals give him a victory by 297 for an 11-9 score. He had 2 bonus points for grabbing a banner and being in my deployment zone, and I had 1 for grabbing that singleton banner. So 13-10 is the total for the first round. I'm not, superly ecstatic about my performance. I could have made some better decisions very early on, and probably given at least a better chance at dealing with things. But I'm not going to worry too much about it. It was a fun game, had a very good opponent, had a nicely painted army, and we had an enjoyable game all around. Learned some things about the High Elves that I didn't know before, and enjoyed the experience all around. I can pack things up and get ready for round 2, where I'm going up against the Warriors of Chaos. That's going to be a little bit different. Always loved the Warriors of Chaos, but not so much. They can be pretty nasty at times. Hope you liked this one, though. Be sure and check back for more videos as we go through the Crucible 3 battles that I played. Like the video if you want to see more. Check me out on Facebook and Twitter. And until next time, you guys, keep fighting.